Good morning. Welcome to NewsWare's Trade Talk for Friday, August 28th. Let's get into the action. Take a look at the S&Ps, which are trading higher. We're up 0.09%, essentially flat all day. We haven't really been seeing any swings significantly all morning long. The market's really awaiting that commentary from Fed Chairman Kevin Warsh later this morning. But last night, the tech earnings were generally positive. However, those stocks are kind of weakening this morning because the bar was actually kind of raised after Wednesday's night. Strong earnings from NVIDIA. Oil prices, they're headed for a weekly loss. And, there are indications that oil flows out of the Middle East are actually higher than previously expected. The key economic event for today, Kevin Warsh's speech at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium. In corporate news, PayPal, the shares are moving lower. Those takeover talks, they're stalling. FTC is said to be in the final stages of a potential lawsuit against Google over blocked social media accounts. Major tech firms are urging a collective action ahead of what they see as a growing threat to AI-enabled cyber attacks. And then here's one that's interesting. Rupert Murdoch is considering a remerger of Fox and News Corp. I saw that Workday announced a $4 billion share buyback program. Interesting. But on the earnings front, we got Affirm, we got AFRM, we got ESTC and Gap all trading higher after their earnings results. Autodesk, ADSK, Marvell, MRVL, Ultra Beauty, ULTA, and Workday, WDAY are lower. On Monday, you got SIAC releasing scheduled report earnings, SAIC. But next week overall, it remains active, in terms of the earnings front. You got Palo Alto Networks, you got Dell, PVH, Five Below, NTAP, Snowflake, Broadcom, Planet Labs, Path, Lululemon, Samsara, and Zscaler are all scheduled to report next week. In terms of the global markets, we're looking at the DAX. The DAX is up 0.5% this morning. Gains in autos, and then there's positive action in chemicals, utilities, and industrial stocks. London, the FTSE's up 0.17% with gains in banks and mining shares. Energy stocks are also, kind of positive. The CAC in Paris is up 0.96%. As markets await the country's credit worthiness story. Remember, Fitch is supposed to be releasing a report today on French credit. Luxury shares, we're seeing gains there this morning. Over in Asia, last night or this morning, generally positive. The Nikkei was up 0.41% with gains in tech and chip stocks moving the market higher. And the yen continues to weaken over there. It actually has weakened for 5 consecutive days. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng, volatile session. Shares opened up lower before recovering as tech stocks benefited from the global tech rally, while biotech stocks did weaken. In China, the Shanghai was lower by 0.11%. Energy and selected tech names provided some support while the market remains cautious over, exposure to trade-related industrial policies. You got to remember that there's a meeting coming up next month between President Trump and President Xi here in the U.S. So there's going to be some, trade talk between the U.S. and China ahead of that announcement. Then we're taking a look at oil this morning. And, in terms of oil, it is weakening. You got WTI at $83.01. You got Brent at $89.44. Traders are continuing to monitor developments out of the Middle East, and they want to see that Strait of Hormuz opened. But I saw a major brokerage firm come out this morning indicating that oil exports from the Persian Gulf have recovered by approximately 2/3 of what they were pre-war. So that's really positive. That's that's a positive story. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about earnings actions. We're going to start off with Elastic, ESTC. The stock's higher by 21.83% this morning. They beat by 12 cents. They did it on higher revenue. Very nice report. Then we got Ultra Beauty, UTLA. Listen, stock's trading higher this morning. Good to see. Let's see, ULTA. Oh no, stocks trading lower, down 0.96% now. But they beat by 36 cents on higher revenue. Then you got Marvell Technologies, which is down 7.77%. They beat by a penny on higher revenue. The report wasn't bad. It just wasn't as the expectations just kind of rose after NVIDIA's positive report on Wednesday. Then upcoming on Monday morning, we got SIAC, SAIC. The EPS is $2.25, and the expected move is 9.25% when they release. In terms of economic reports this morning, at 9:45 you get the Chicago PMI. At 10 a.m. we get the consumer sentiment. That's the University of Michigan data. Then at 1 p.m. we get the Baker Hughes rig count. And of course, at 10 a.m. Fed Chair Kevin Warsh will be giving the keynote speech at the annual Jackson Hole Economic Policy Symposium. You know, this year's theme is financial innovation, implications for payments and policy, which, you know, marks the first time that digital payments and fintech has served as the area of the event's key focus. So I'm kind of expecting Fed Chair Kevin Warsh to kind of talk a little bit about stable coins, and we'll have to wait and see what he has to say. But this could be another reason why we're seeing some gains in the cryptos as of late. In terms of FANG stock news, you know, Apple's got that iPhone event scheduled for September 9th. Google said it is changing so certain websites and with third-party content rank appear in search results across Europe. You know, they're trying to appease the European regulators. Meta's said to be writing big checks to Democrats in an effort to gain favor with the Democratic Party ahead of the midterm elections. In terms of Dow Jones 30 stocks, Microsoft and more than 100 other tech companies are warning of near-term AI-enabled crypto cyber attacks. Chevron, CVX, Venezuela is carefully considering plans to leave OPEC. Google, the FTC, is in final stages of a potential suit over blocked social media accounts. Merger news, PayPal moving lower as Stripe and Advent are said to be walking away from the deal. In terms of guidance news, Marvell sees Q3 EPS coming in at $1.05 to $1.15. Street is $1.08. Yeah, that's in range. Autodesk sees Q3 coming in $3.04 to $3.09. Street estimates $3.14. That's a little light. Centennial One, ticker S, they see Q3 EPS coming in 8 to 9 cents. Yet the street estimate is for a negative 15 cents. And Affirm, AFRM, sees Q1 revenue coming in $1.19 billion to $1.22 billion. Street estimates at 1.16. That's a nice uptick. In terms of catalyst calls, Werner, ticker WER, Deutsche Bank's out there naming it a short-term buy idea. They also called SAIA, Sam Apple, India Apple, as a short-term buy idea, Deutsche Bank. Let's talk about today's pick of the day. I'm going to go with Robinhood, ticker HOOD, Henry Oscar David. It's all about the Fed chairman's speech today at 10 a.m. I mean, you know, you look at yesterday's call volume, 119,000 on the call side, 47,000 on the put side. It's a put-call ratio of 0.40. That's positive. Open interest is 1 million calls versus about 660 puts. Yeah, that's again is positive. And the brokers are raising price targets on Robinhood, so I like to see that. But I need a little bit of weakness. I'm trying to get in around 108. That's my price target. So Robinhood is my pick of the day, ticker HOOD. Okay, let's move on. Start talking about the stocks that are, you know, making some noise over the last 15, 20 minutes or so. PayPal sinks 16% as Advent and Stripe are said to be dropping the $50 billion deal. Take-Two's up 3%. Grand Theft Auto's coming out. There's a preview on Netflix. TTWO. Lilly announced that the FDA approval of Mounjaro to reduce cardiovascular risk. Interesting. This could be hot. Boston Fed Bank President Susan Collins said she's open to a rate increase if she sees conditions as not providing evidence of continued disinflation. Gap's trading higher after raising their full year outlook. Uber came out and said their AI spend has relatively stabilized since April due to optimizations across the board. Ulta Beauty announced a $300 million buyback. Avago, Broadcom, AVGO, they got that Broadcom VMware Explorer 2026 event with presentations that starts on Monday. That's something to keep an eye out on. That's all I'm seeing this morning. Okay, let's talk about yesterday's pick of the day, which was RBRK Rubik. Listen, stock opened up at 101.99 and ran to 107.83 before closing at 107.18. So the 1% was there. It's trading off this morning, but man, it had a stellar breakout yesterday morning, straight from the opening bell. It had a nice run. So listen, trading these things before earnings typically works out. Less volatility, less downside because the actual event hasn't hit. So, if you can get them on the cheap, take the money and run. RBRK worked out yesterday. All right, traders, that concludes today's NewsWare's Trade Talk podcast. You know what to do. Let's go out there and make some green.